What's up, everyone? The other day, my friends and I were talking about continuation and misconceptions about it, and my friend Marcel said, "Alright, I'm gonna make a video about it, and you guys should too." And so, me and Alex are planning videos. This is my video right now, and I believe Maxine is also making a video for her Instagram. And basically, what we all wanted to do is tackle the concept of continuation and talk about what we want to see out of it, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about the topic. For background, what are we even talking about? Let's break this down for the newest of new so that they understand what we're talking about. So, the Star Wars Expanded Universe, which you see behind me, a lot of it at least, the Star Wars Expanded Universe was a collaborative conglomerate of stories of continuity. It was based around the Star Wars universe, and it began with a novel that was released in 1976, about 6 months before the first movie. The Expanded Universe, thus, predated the Star Wars universe. It immediately kicked off with comics, novels, source books, eventually video games, short stories. Anything you can imagine was a part of this extensive expanded universe. There are even films and shows that are only a part of the Star Wars Expanded Universe. The Star Wars Expanded Universe was one timeline, it was one continuity. Events in one piece of media, for example, an event in one book would impact another story in a comic or show or video game. These stories weren't contained, they mattered. They mattered for the other stories. They impacted other stories. Whether set thousands of years apart from each other or set very close together, the events could all impact one another. The authors were collaborative. They attempted to weave continuity between all of these projects, and that's what made it super special. What made it special was the fact that these stories connected. One character here might show up here in someone else's story because it was one timeline, it was one continuity between book, comic, and video game, and other stuff too. And so this was a really special timeline. It was a really special part of Star Wars. It worked to fill in the gaps between the movies, explain inconsistencies in the movies, go beyond the movies, before the movies, in between the movies. It worked to fill in the gaps and to really flesh out the universe, expand the universe, if you will. The Expanded Universe had thousands of pieces of media published for it. When you add them all up, when you get the tally, there were thousands of stories set in this expanded universe by hundreds of different authors who had these amazing jobs, who had these amazing stories, who had this amazing passion. And April 25th, 2014, and they announced that it was all coming to an end. All of these stories that we loved, all of these characters that we enjoyed to follow, gone in an instant, like Thanos' snap. This was the last novel published within the expanded universe. Very sad. We went from 1976 to 2014. And it's pretty disappointing that our stories were no longer there for us to enjoy. These storylines were cut off. We didn't get conclusions. There were many storylines that were in development that were canceled, like Sword of the Jedi, like Mandorla. There were many projects that we just didn't get to see ultimately. And there were many storylines that weren't concluded, like Dawn of the Jedi, SWTOR, the post-Return of the Jedi era with Crucible to Legacy. There were huge gaps in the timeline because they weren't planning for it to end. We didn't get a conclusion. These stories were cut off. The plug was pulled, and they were gone. So we don't have conclusions for many of the characters, many of the storylines, many of these events. We're left hanging, and it's really disappointing. So, what do we want? Because there's still a huge fan base for this massive expanded universe. And what do we want out of it? Now, it depends on who you ask. If you go around the fandom, you'll get different answers from several people. But I'd like to talk about what I would like to see out of continuation. And just nail my colors to the wall. What do I want to see? How do I want these stories to return? Well, I've seen some people who will say, oh, we need to erase Disney's canon timeline. The Disney canon timeline was Disney's Lucasfilm stories that started after 2014. I believe Rebels was one of the first projects, And then this includes all the movies post 2014, all the books, comics, video games after 2014. That's all part of the Disney timeline. So they have the High Republic, the sequels, all of that is part of this new timeline. So some expanded universe fans, in bitterment, resentment, they say, let's erase the Disney canon timeline. Decanonize that. Discontinue that the way that we were decanonized and discontinued. Now, not only do I think that's not very feasible, but there are fans of this new timeline. Why would we want them to go through what we went through, which was just bitter disappointment, frustration when all of our stories came to a close? Why would we want them to go through that just because we had to go through it? And is it feasible? No. These are huge movies and shows that have been shown to so many people, that have been watched by so many people. Are their numbers down? Sure. But it doesn't diminish their cultural impact. And there has been cultural impact. These have been shown to many people. So I feel that it's not something that's feasible to put back in the box. So the continuation that I advocate for is not a replacement. We're not going to decanonize the canon storyline and replace it with the Legends Expanded Universe timeline. No. What I want to see is a continuation alongside it. I want to see the original creatives brought back to work on it. People like Timothy Zahn or Michael Stackpole. People like Matthew Stover or James Luceno. People like John Ostrander or Sean Stewart. I want to see the original creatives who had stories within the expanded universe come back to write stories for it. And you can absolutely bring in new blood. I know there's people who work on canon who are probably huge fans of the expanded universe Legends timeline and would love to have stories set within it. So because of this, we can bring in some new blood, but bring back some of the original creatives who had stories, who had work that they had within this timeline. Let them return to continue the stories and wrap up some of these storylines that we never got conclusions to. Continue it alongside it. We would absolutely buy brand new stories with the Legends banner. After all, we buy reprints with the Legends banner. There would be a huge market for new material published under the Legends Expanded Universe banner. And for years, continuation efforts were kind of laughed at. We were outliers, we were outcasts. But recently, there's been kind of a swing in momentum a little bit, where from mainstream articles and journalism, there's people saying that they should continue Expanded Universe and Legend stories. New articles that have been kind of supporting what we've been saying for a decade. It's been really nice to see that turn around. Some people will say continuation isn't feasible. They can't do two timelines at once. Look at Star Trek. They have the Kelvin timeline and the Prime timeline. Both are running concurrently, and fans know which is which. It would be easy to know what's a Legend story with the banner, what's an Expanded Universe story, and what's a new story for the canon timeline. You could absolutely continue two universes and have new material coming out in both of them simultaneously. That way everyone's happy. Fans of the new stuff, fans of the old stuff. We're all getting new stories to enjoy. And for people who say it's not feasible, what about Marvel 108? This came out after the decanonization and discontinuation. SWOTOR is still publishing short stories to this day that are part of only the Legends timeline. No one thinks they're part of the canon timeline. No one's confused there. There's brand new SWOTOR short stories set in the Expanded Universe timeline. Stuff like this comic book that have the Legends banner, that were created after 2014, that are proof that a continuation is feasible, it's possible, and it can happen and can work. And so I think that's a very important example. Continuation definitely is possible. Continuation has happened in isolated examples. 108 and SWOTOR. There is continued EU stories that have occurred after 2014. And there absolutely can be more, regularly. New novels, new comics. That's all we're asking for. And I think that what we're asking for is pretty easy to give us. I think there's a market for it. I think there wouldn't be much confusion from it, because it would be easy to tell what's the difference. I think there's demand for it, and that way no one's unhappy. You're not losing your Disney canon stories. You're just gaining Expanded Universe Legend stories. More stories to enjoy for everyone. So that's what I would like to see out of continuation. I definitely think that continuation should happen. I think continuation is a worthy cause. I think that continuation would be a great thing for the Star Wars fandom, which kind of fractured at 2014. People went this way, people went that way. And I think that the Expanded Universe continuing in an official capacity would help mend that a little bit, would help the embitterment, would help fans of all things Star Wars be happy. So I think that continuation could be really important. I think continuation could be very profitable for Disney, and I think continuation is necessary. These stories were cut off unceremoniously. They need finished for the fans, for the writers, for the creatives, for the brand. I think that it's essential. I think that it's imperative. I think that it's necessary. So that's what I'd like to see out of continuation. And in the meantime, while we're waiting for it, there's some very worthy causes that are continuing the expanded universe in a fan capacity. And I absolutely support that. Things like the Re-Expanded Universe Project, which is a fan fiction initiative of fans who are continuing the expanded universe with stories that adhere to expanded universe canonicity and continuity and are all under one umbrella, under one banner. The Re-Expanded Universe Initiative takes the wildly popular Hand of Thrawn 45 stories and incorporates them into its canon. It's a fan fiction canon, and it determines what is going to be a part of this umbrella, and it continues the Expanded Universe as a fan fiction project initiative. And I think that that's great and absolutely support that. Additionally, I support the Expanded Supernatural Encounters stories. These are also a fan fiction initiative with stories that are being looked at by editors of Supernatural Encounters. And there's a lot of great stories under this umbrella already. Wish 13, Luke Van Horn's story. There's some cool stuff under the Expanded Supernatural Encounters banner as well. Expanded Encounters. And I absolutely support that. It's a continuation of the expanded universe under a coordinated, peer-reviewed system. And it's great that the fans have taken this into their own hands, that we're making stories to finish what was started. At least it gives us a little bit of closure. But in my heart, even though I've contributed to these projects, even though I support and love these projects, it's not the same as official continuation. So I absolutely support fan fiction initiatives to continue the EU. But I think it's a great holdover until the day when hopefully we could get an official continuation. I think an official continuation would be really great, and it's really something that I'd like to see. So that's kind of my thoughts on continuation, my little ramble here. Make sure to check out Marcel's video, Alex's video, Maxine's video. I think it's an important topic, and I think it's one that isn't talked about a lot. I think somewhere along the way, people forgot, or people just didn't know, what the continuation is that we're asking for. We're not asking to replace Disney canon. We're asking for continuation alongside it. And I think that that's very important. I think that it's very feasible. I think that it's likely. I think there's a chance that we get our stories continued and concluded. And I think that it's imperative that it happens. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know your thoughts on continuation of the expanded universe in the comments.